You ready? Great. What's going on, guys? This is Zach here with Andrew. We're going to talk some college football, college fantasy, pretty much whatever we want to talk about. Could go either direction here. So, Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Dude, at the same time you teed this up, ESPN just started playing a video in the background of my browser, and I was like, why is this coming from Zach's computer or what's going on here? So
I hate ESPN's website. I hate it.
It's atrocious. Yeah,
like, it's as big of a company as it is. It's pretty terrible. Like as far as
I've stopped using them in pretty much any capacity on mobile, especially. They're like still digging stats out at like high level stats. They're fine. That like their UI is fine for like just quick references for team by team type stuff, but it's borderline unusable for lots of the stuff that I want to do.
Yeah, I think I told you that we had a conversation about this a few months ago, I think, about like what do we use for our like how do we check stats and scores and stuff. Like I exclusively use I say exclusively for college football, I use Yahoo, the Yahoo Sports app. And then for NFL and NBA, I use the Score app, which is it's weird. Don't ask me why I do it. I guess it's just so I know when I click the Yahoo Sports, college football comes up, and then if I click Score, NFL comes up. I don't have to like switch around in the app. Like it's just a thing I do, I guess.
I was living and dying with the Score for about 10 years, I guess, at this point, until their app crashed in like the middle of the college football season on like on a Saturday afternoon. So. And it was down all Saturday afternoon, so I finally gave in and tried out the Action app that a lot of our fellow degenerates are all about, and it's sweet. I mean, I still use Score probably 80-90% of the time, but Action is definitely quality. And I've told you this, but the best thing about the Action app is that they give you that countdown from at halftime when the game.
Oh yes.
So you don't have to just keep hitting refresh on the Score. You actually know
it's got 4 minutes and 12 seconds left until the second.
Great.
Yeah. That's great. Like I used that for a while, mainly to track bets.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good way to do that.
Definitely.
You know,
it's super sleek. I mean, prop and credit where it's due. It's a dope app for sure.
Yeah. So I guess to sum all this up, ESPN's app is their website sucks and don't use it.
Yeah. That's what we're driving towards.
All right. So we're going to kind of jump into, you want to talk about college football or just like college fantasy? Like which direction you kind of want to go here? Because there's a lot of things we could talk about. College fantasy obviously is like, it's the off season, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say let's start off with college football and we'll invariably head down the fantasy road.
Okay. Because it's kind of, it's obviously linked, but like, all right, we'll just talk about that. So, you've got the transfer portal that is basically eliminated the college football offseason, right? It's like free agency, essentially, in like the NBA. Everybody's talking about, oh, man, all these big moves and all this stuff. And now you have it basically in college football where if a guy – he doesn't even have to not play. If he just says, you know what, I want something new, he can move. Or if he doesn't feel like he's getting enough playing time, he can move, and we see it everywhere. So do you feel like there's a player or players in particular that will be kind of headliners as far as transfers?
So when I want to actually parlay your idea of whether we want to talk college football or college fantasy and apply it to the transfer portal on a take that I'm still workshopping and don't have it down exactly kind of to the point that I want to, but I'm starting to form a pretty definitive opinion on the transfer portal as it relates to college fantasy football, in the sense that I think it does one thing very, very definitively, in that it makes the game that much harder. And not just college fantasy football, but also I think when you talk about trying to bet upcoming seasons, right, moving from the end of one season up into the new one, it makes the edge for people who want to really grind it out and put in the work that much greater. So when you're talking about betting futures in the off season, right? Whether it just be win totals or conference championship winners. I think it was already hard enough for books to put out accurate numbers for college football, and relative to fantasy, I think that any individual that's trying to track college football from the end of one year to the beginning of the next one and form accurate assumptions, form real opinions that are going to hold water when the games actually kick off. It was difficult enough, and now the transfer portal just makes that all the more difficult.
Yeah, well, I want to jump in real quick. I want to say something. So, you say like the people who put the work in to to dive in and try to find it, it makes it more rewarding. But you could also look at it as so much more unpredictable too. Like if you have a guy that was not really established at where he was, or whoever that may be, and he goes to a team that's pretty good already and has established players, like how much does he take away from the guys that were already there versus or does he just take the whole job away from somebody, right? Like we don't know, and you won't know that until get to spring practices and see kind of how that goes. And then you get the coach speak anyway. Oh, he's working hard, he's learning the plays, blah, 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 all that crap, right? Then you get to week 1 and he's starting and you had no idea. Like it makes it a little more unpredictable. I'm looking at it more like wide receiver positions.
Oh, there's definitely lots of unpredictableness to it, but I think that it's just what a lot of people probably do, right, is you roll over the end of 2021, you subtract who left, and you make assumptions maybe about coaching staff more or less, and then you set expectations for 2022. And now we've got absolute chaos comings, goings, all this stuff, and it's going to make it that much more difficult, I think, for both in fantasy and in sports betting. And I think that it require that much more effort, and it's a good and bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that, I mean, the thing that I love the most about college fantasy football and college football in general, when it comes to just betting, it is you get it out of it what you put in, right? If you're trying to take shortcuts, it's just probably not the game for you. But at the same time, like how does that help grow the game? Like people who just want to kind of hop in and have a good time, they're going to get slaughtered. So that's probably great.
And I've kind of learned that this year, where I haven't like stepped away from it. Like I'm still involved, like, doing my research, but I'm not diving in as deep as maybe I was in years past. Mainly due to lack of just time. And honestly, just, I don't really want to put that effort in right now. Like I feel like, my life is in a spot, right? I got kids and all that stuff. So it's like, man, I would have no life if I did that. Like that would be my life. And I don't know that I want that to be my life, which nothing wrong with it. But like you say, though, the fact that the game of college fantasy football needs to grow, it's hard to grow when the complete degenerates, like, I'll include myself just for the sake of this, like us, that we have a superior advantage over the casual person who just wants to come in and have a good time, play fantasy football.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in NFL, like there's 32 teams, and who those 32 teams are. You know who the good players are on all those teams for the most part. So you go into your draft, it's the same players, and you could do every 100 drafts, and all the players are going to be the same, just maybe picked in different spots, right? In college fantasy, if you do all 130 teams, like you're going to have a wide range of outcomes. Like maybe your first couple rounds are going to go pretty similar, but like after that, it starts to kind of vary a lot depending on how you like a player, like where you're from. Like what if you're on the West Coast, like you're probably going to be more biased to those players. Like that happens. But as far as I kind of want to get away from the fantasy part, let's talk about this college football. Any moves, head coaching, quarterback, any transfers that you want to talk about that will just be exciting to watch in general?
I mean, there's so many.
I mean, right? You have Lincoln Riley at USC. Like, I'll ask the question: do you think they're an instant contender to win the Pac-12?
I think both the Big 12 and Pac-12 are going to feel seismic implications of Riley going to USC. So much talent leaving OU. Of course, they bring in good recruiting classes, right? And they're getting talent coming in through the portal as well. But I don't think it nets out to I don't think it's net zero. And I also think that what we're seeing on the Pac-12 side, right, with Riley presumably going to I think he will have more success than USC has had in recent years. Oregon maybe comes down a notch with Cristobal leaving, transfers kind of fleeing from there as well. I mean, I have faith in Dan Lanning. That dude just played a serious role in bringing my team a national championship. But I think that, I don't know, I don't think it's fair to have expectations that are super, super high for them in year one. So I think overall, like, Riley going to USC has the biggest takeaway from that is relative chaos in the Big 12 and Pac-12 for this upcoming year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was actually talking with somebody that I work with about this, about Riley going to USC. And the way I look at it is I know that it'll take a little bit of time to kind of to get everything gelled together and work like he had it at Oklahoma. But the Pac-12 South, it's Utah, right? Like, maybe Arizona State. Like, UCLA is tough, but I feel like they should be a 10-win team.
I mean, he's going to build a winner there for sure.
I mean, right off the bat, I feel like a 10, like if they don't get 10 wins, I'm kind of disappointed.
Do you have the schedule up?
I do not, but I can pull it up.
I mean, that got like I'm starting to more proactively form real hatred for these coaches that run these systems that just, they're supposed to be high flying attacks, run fast pace, throw the ball over the place,
right?
Or maybe not so much throw the ball over the place, but score lots of points, run a fast pace,
high octane offense.
And like, you and I could play wide receiver for these teams, and it wouldn't matter because wide receivers are not involved. I'm thinking Oregon. I'm thinking Riley's offense the last couple of years. Like, what? I don't. If you're a wide receiver, why are you going to play for this dude when your job just seems to be just block and maybe
you're a plug and play. You're a plug and play guy. Like, wide receivers seem to be like, look, we'll get all this talent. If we have to lean on these guys, we have this talent at our disposal, but we really don't want to lean on them. So, like you said, why would you, if you're a 4 or 5 star wide receiver, you're going there, whoever the quarterback is, because the quarterback's probably going to be a Heisman contender, right? Like, that's the idea. I guess that's the thinking behind it. Now, USC's never really had a problem getting wide receivers. I know I'm shifting this mainly to that scenario, that situation.
Yeah.
But, like, I just feel like it's instant NFL if you go to USC and be a star wide receiver, right? Like, that's kind of what these kids are looking at.
Yeah, they've now got just, I think it's 6 or 7 receivers that have a decent level of experience and national recognition.
All right, you asked for the schedule.
Okay,
so here's USC's schedule this season. It goes. They open up with Rice at home, at Stanford, Fresno, at Oregon State, Arizona State, Washington State, at Utah. Then they get a bye week at Arizona, Cal, Colorado, at UCLA, and then they close with Notre Dame. Like, I feel like 10-2 is reasonable.
I lean 8-4.
Obviously, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Utah would probably be favored. At right now, if you're building it right now,
yeah,
you're going to say, okay, Utah's probably favored. Maybe Notre Dame's favored, and maybe UCLA. Like, all the other games should be wins. So 9-3. I think right in the middle, 8-4 and 10-2. Like, right in the middle, 9-3.
They're probably, but a bunch of those games, they're probably between 50 and 65%. You flip
Yeah.
that coin enough times, you're going to lose a couple probably.
Yeah, I guess I'm just giving Riley too much credit, like just right off the bat, like he's just going to instantly make them a contender. Like, I guess that's because I saw at Oklahoma, like they were just a contender every year, but Oklahoma was always good anyway.
Until he starts involving his receivers more, he's dead to me. Like the two man QB running back game that he played, especially in the back the back 8 games or so this year. That's the game you play at Cincinnati when you have Ritter and Ford, and you don't have the ability to recruit 4 and 5 stars at every single other position, because
Right.
you can just those guys are so much better and more athletic than everyone else that you don't need to involve every single player like the star talent that you have at other positions. When you're at Oklahoma, when you're at USC, you should be playing that game. Like let your alien wide receivers go for 6, 150 and 2.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about something right before we went live here about the Hawaii head coach situation. Would you like to talk about it?
So I'm seeing that Brent McMurphy just tweeted out that June Jones has declined an offer to become Hawaii's head coach.
Which is funny because I could have sworn I sent you a link within the last week, saying like he interviewed him and he said he'd be open to it. Right. And I don't know if that was worth it.
I honestly didn't even watch the link, but I've been following like the news stream fairly closely.
My question then becomes, does he want to coach, or is it, did they insult him with an Andrew style offer, or is he just kind of playing chicken with them? I don't understand.
It seems like when you are, I'm probably pretending to be more knowledgeable about Hawaii, the politics of Hawaii football than I actually am.
This is your wheelhouse. So I'm gonna let you.
But I believe when you are landing or in the process of landing an administrative position such as college football coach at Hawaii, you are dealing with multiple bodies of power, such as the athletic director, the people. I don't know what the body you would call like the Hawaii government, since it's a public university that like it is like stays very close to the government, stays very close to the university. Like case in point, Graham
that was a big deal when they were firing Graham, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Letting him go.
So my assumption is that when you are in discussions for this job, you're not just talking with the athletic director, right? You're having to negotiate and talk with all these other parties as well. And I assume something hit a snag, like maybe party A wanted him, party B didn't, or he pushed back on his wants and needs, and it just got shot down. By one of those parties. I mean, like on the surface, right? We all kind of assume that it's a dream job. It's coaching football at Hawaii, but it's fairly well known that it's a very unique job for so many reasons. Nick and Scott and Xavier on CFB Winning Edge podcast. Do you listen to that? I don't. They do it year round, so I listen to it religiously every week, especially in the off season. They talked about this for like an hour on their pod that just went up like earlier this week. There's so many unique challenges, from the geography to the recruiting. The university doesn't have a lot of money, so there's that element of it too. So like the surface level idea of this being a dream job in the sense that like you're living in Hawaii, when you talk about the day-to-day associated with it, it's probably a lot more interesting and probably not what a lot of college coaches are necessarily looking for.
Right.
You assimilating yourself to the culture there is apparently like not apparently, but is super, super important, and even more so than it probably is in a lot of other schools. So I can understand and relate to like all the different challenges associated with it.
Yeah, because like on the surface, like you said, it looks it's a dream job, right?
Yeah,
it's
you're coaching in Hawaii.
Who cares? You're in Hawaii, like. Yeah, but like all those things you said, like the lack of a athletic budget, like every game that they travel, every road game costs them a lot more money than other teams, right? Like, but they're not going an hour up the road to play anybody. Like it's a flight everywhere.
The result of these realities, though, is that they've unfortunately kind of gone back and forth between good hire and bad hire for what, like 20 years at this point. June Jones to Norm Chow to, did Rolo come next? I think Rolo was next after Chow, and then Todd Graham, and now they finally had, or I would like to think that it's still, I would like to think that just because June Jones said no, maybe it's a negotiating tactic, but they have it all teed up for the dream setup for like set them up for the next 30 years. Bring in June Jones as head coach, pry away Timmy Chang, wide receiver coach.
That's what I've been reading. Like they've been trying to get him, right?
Make him head coach in waiting / OC. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the current and the future covered from all sides. But trying to make everyone happy financially and then satisfying them from a power perspective too is probably exceedingly difficult.
You know, when you say what you said, like to get ingrained in like the culture of Hawaii, like that might be one of, obviously there's jobs where the culture is important. Like I get it, but, or you know how a lot of places they want to hire an alum, you know, because they know the school, they know the traditions and all that. Like I don't know that it's any more important than it is at Hawaii, right? Yeah. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you know, if you go to Michigan, oh, he's a Michigan man. Harbaugh's a Michigan man. You had to bring a Michigan man in. Like, did you really, or was he just he just happened to be a great coach that happened to also be a Michigan man? Like, whereas Hawaii, they kind of need a Hawaii guy, right? Definitely. Like that's kind of it. So, be interesting to see where they go with that. You know, Hawaii, you know, we used to love it when those big the run and shoot, you know.
Oh my God!
The Timmy Changs, the Colt Brennan style offenses that we would get, man, like those were fantasy dreams, right?
Yeah, I mean, Rolo brought it back. It was It was humming.
Yeah, but it's like now. Well, Chow tried to like change it, right? Like he tried to like go to the ground and pound style. So we just want the run and shoot. That's all we really want, right?
At midnight.
Yeah, at midnight. So we'll see where they go with that. Maybe June Jones can work something out and he can go there.
Yeah, I think it's a negotiating tactic.
I do too. I want to find the link that I sent. I could have sworn that I sent it to you, but maybe not.
You did, but it's fine.
Not that big of a deal. But anyway. All right. So I guess as far as I asked you about head coaches or players you thought might make an impact. Anybody else that you're kind of thinking of? A lot of transfers. There's been so many transfers, and just in the last like 3 days, like you can pick anybody.
Oh man, I mean, I talked about him when I talked with Jared, but I really want to buy all the way in on Plumlee going to UCF. Yeah, Jared's too young. I mean, I don't want to talk shit on anyone, but Jared, it helps him in some ways. I think in that doesn't have the scars, the battle wounds that we have from playing CFF.
He's naive.
He's naive in some ways, and I mean, it's a learning curve. It's a learning experience. I mean, soon he'll be the conspiracy theorist that we are when it comes to CFF, where every single thing that comes out of every person's mouth, you just doubt for a good reason. But but a good example, I think, is he is super skeptical of Gus Malzahn offenses, and it's because all he's seen. And after talking with him, I heard his skepticism, and I went and tried to understand it more. And I looked back at recent years and what Gus has had as his quarterback, and I forgot about the Sean White years, the Stidham years, and Gus hasn't had a true Gus quarterback since like Nick Marshall.
Yeah.
So when I think about what Plumlee's,
and even then it was chaos, right? Like it was like organized chaos, but like it was
awesome though.
Yeah.
Like owning Nick Marshall, it wasn't necessarily that you would get it every single week, but like that dude was fun to own. Like I enjoyed that experience. And I think that when I think about what Plumlee can do in UCF's offense, I think along the lines of what Nick Marshall did when Gus was coach. They
Mhm.
brought in so much talent around him. I don't really understand why, because Plumlee's just going to run it 30 times a game, and they're going to give it to Bowser the other 30, and that's going to be that. But they brought in a ton of weapons, which, I mean, in some ways makes me kind of want to question if he for sure has the job, right? Like, I don't know why you bring in all these talented receivers and tight ends just to block for Plumlee and Bowser. But I mean, that's part of coaching, right? You con these guys over, you con them to come to your program, and then sucks. I mean, maybe they transfer out, right? Getting back to the portal, but hopefully he'll get them for this year at least.
Yeah. I guess I can see his skepticism, like why he would have it. And like you said, he just hasn't been around long enough to see I mean, Nick Marshall was what year was that?
Yeah, it's terrifying how long ago it actually was. It's
Right.
like
Like
2013,
9-10 years ago almost. Like
when I think Nick Marshall, I think the kick six game, right? That's like 2013.
yeah. So almost 10 years ago.
But
right.
but when you think about the offense that Gus wants to run, that is it, right? I don't understand necessarily. Like, I don't know. I would love to get in his head and understand what he was thinking with some of these quarterbacks that he's brought in, which don't seem like great fits to a system. And I think that some of it is like just getting infatuated with stars. Like when you can recruit like 4 and 5 stars,
we got a 4-star quarterback, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I look at some teams that bring in quarterbacks. I'm like, why? Like Alabama, right? They can kind of put whoever they want there because they have the skill positions around them to help them flourish. Like you look at, they had Jalen Hurts, then you have Tua, then you get Mac Jones, who's like the opposite of those two guys, right? Like Mac Jones isn't trying to run anywhere. And he can, I guess, if he has to, but he's not trying to. And then you get Bryce Young, who is as dynamic as they come, right? So if you were watching Bryce Young and you were a 4 or 5-star pocket passing statue quarterback, like, does Alabama really want you after seeing the success of what they have in a Bryce Young? Maybe Alabama does just so they can fill a roster, I guess, of talent, so somebody else doesn't get them. But I wonder how much of that really goes in recruiting. How much of it is let's get this guy so Georgia can't get him?
Right. Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Or Ole Miss or whoever, right? Like any of our rivals that can't get him. If we have him on our roster, even if we know he's going to transfer in a year or two, like at least they couldn't get him for the first couple years. Like maybe that plays a role. I don't know, but it just seems odd some of the destinations that some of these quarterbacks end up at. But there was a transfer I wanted to talk about, and Chris probably won't like it. You know, Bo Nix going to Oregon. How do you feel about that? Like, I'm not a big Bo Nix guy. Like a lot of people, a lot of people like him. They think he's great.
I get that he's a meme. Like at this point, that's basically what he is, right? But I don't know. I do not dislike and don't get as nervous as a lot of people do, I guess, when it comes to his freestyling way that he works once he drops back. Like one of my favorite tweets I saw this year during college football season was something along the lines of, when Bo Nix drops back to pass, it's like he needs to explore every single inch of the pocket like it's a Zelda dungeon. And I was like, that's so perfect.
That is good.
But I mean, in some ways that the Bo Nix strategy represents CFF perfectly, or how to be successful in CFF, in the sense that I think he thrives in chaos. So not every quarterback can do that. For CFF purposes though, I mean, I'm not super interested.
Well, I'm not really necessarily talking about that. I mean, I feel like just like the what's the word? The compatibility of him going to Oregon, I guess, is kind of where I'm at with that. Like you said, he lives in this chaotic scheme. Yeah. He works best in that. Like he's had some moments where I'm like, wow, maybe he is actually good.
I think he's a good quarterback. I think,
but then I watch other moments and I'm like, dude, this guy sucks. Like, what are we doing here? Like, so I feel like he's a hot and cold quarterback.
For sure. Yeah. I don't know. I'll just keep my take on Bo Nix super simple in that I think he's I think he's a good enough quarterback to get you to a New Year's Six game on a decent team, on a good team. But for CFF purposes, I mean, I'm not super interested.
I think he's an upgrade to what they had, right? Like I feel like it's pretty safe to say.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not even talking about fantasy wise. I'm just talking about just pure being able to lead them to greater heights, right? Like
yeah,
I feel like
I mean,
they got a better
shot
at winning than they did before.
It felt like Brown really got exposed in the back half of the year in some of the bigger games. So
right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
When you think back, like how in the hell did they beat Ohio State? Like, if you really think about that, like it's like Oregon got worse as the year went along, and Ohio State got better. So it kind of leads me to a college football playoff discussion. I don't know if we want to get into that here, but like, I'll just say what I'm going to say. Early losses seem to count way more than they should. Like if you lose week 1 or week 2, but you're a completely different team in week 10, is that not? I mean, obviously losses have to count. I get it. But does a loss in week 1 or week 2 not equal the same as a loss in week 10, week 11, when we know who you are? Like teams, they don't account for teams getting better.
I hate so much of the playoff discussion, and my opinion on it generally comes down to the idea that the committee will retcon whatever logic they want to get the teams that they want in, more or less. So, I mean, I
don't want to derail into the playoff discussion. I know it's that could be its own talk, yeah. but I just feel like when you look at that Oregon-Ohio State game, we all know if they played 100 times, Ohio State's probably going to win 90 of them, right?
Like, that game and the Texas A&M Alabama game were the two. They were the two. Like if you were, they're the equivalent of throwing a perfect game by the coaching staffs and on the field from A&M and Oregon.
Right. And that's what they had to do in order to win. Like A&M, like people thought, oh, A&M beat Alabama. Yes, they did, and credit to them. But they played it, like you said, a damn near perfect game.
Yeah.
And how many times out of 100 could they do that? Maybe 5, right? Like, I just feel like those losses, like, look, anybody that beats Alabama, you know what? They deserve to win it. Like, they could say Alabama lost it now. Like, you beat them, right? But I don't know. I'm not going to go. I'll save that for another discussion about the playoffs. But I guess my thought on Nix was that I think he's better than Brown, and I think that you might actually see Bo Nix flourish. Like I might be a little higher on him CFF wise than you are, only because like he's been playing at Auburn for these last few years, right? Like he's gonna go to Oregon. It's gonna be a completely different like defense he's looking at, right? Like he doesn't have these guys in the SEC chasing after him every game. Like it might come a lot easier to him at Oregon.
Yeah, that's fair. He's a great athlete. That's obvious.
Right? Like I feel like they could utilize him, not necessarily trying to. His playmaking ability might flourish more in a system where it's more wide open.
Well, it's embarrassing for me to admit it because I never want to admit that I don't know anything, but I don't remember what their offensive system is going to look like now with Moorhead going to Akron. I don't remember what they brought in the way of offensive coordinator.
At Oregon?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I have the internet, and I think so do you. So we can look at that. I'm not going to be embarrassed. You can hear my keyboard click. Kenny Dillingham.
Oh yeah, dude. That brings my excitement down a little less. I think we saw Norvell and Dillingham work at Memphis in that very specific environment of like where they had all these amazing chess pieces in the AAC, and then we saw them go to Florida State, and it's been the only time they've had a success is when they've had. So maybe this is okay. Let's draw the success story here. the only time they've had success at Florida State is when they let Jordan Travis just do the Bo Nix thing and just freelance all over the place. So maybe they just turn Bo loose or not they, because it's just Dillingham, but maybe Dillingham just turns Bo Nix loose, lets him go all Jordan Travis on everyone, and that's how Bo Nix has.
That's how he operates, though, right? Like that's kind of where he thrives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's up in the air, like what kind of impact fantasy wise he'll be, but
yeah, for sure.
A couple other quarterbacks. How do you feel about Cordero going to San Jose State?
Oh, I'm super excited, dude.
Love it, right? Like,
I mean, with all of the really fun options that we're seeing potentially taking over the Hawaii program, I kind of wish now that he just stayed home. But
yeah,
hindsight being 2020, obviously. But they brought in like three of my best friends at San Jose State. They brought in him, Elijah Cooks, and Justin Lockhart, who are like especially in Dynasty. I have those guys on all my teams, like targeted them specifically, and I have like complete confidence in all of them individually. So Justin Lockhart, you're familiar with him or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so Nevada receiver got some run because Elijah Cooks went down with injury, which is, I don't want to go on too many tangents, but anyone who drafted Romeo Dubs this year, congratulations. You lucked into Elijah Cooks getting hurt 2 years in a row, and that's why you profited. That's the only reason that's all I have to say on that, I guess. But anyway, Lockhart stepped in a little bit with Torrey Horton and had success in Cooks's absence. But I learned through my research that Justin Lockhart is Shaq's nephew.
Like Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that I didn't realize that until late in the game. I was already super invested in Lockhart from an emotional and fantasy perspective. But
that's like a fact I would come up with. Like,
dude, yeah, that extremely Zach. But I love that trio. I feel really bad for Starkel as a huge Starkel believer, going back to when we first saw him ball out in that bowl game against Wake Forest when he was at Texas A&M.
Oh yeah,
like I love that dude. Like I went down with the ship at Arkansas and then rose from the dead at San Jose State with him, and it sucked this year. He didn't get to go out how he should have because they had absolutely nothing in talent around him with the exception of Derek Deese. And like by the end of the season, it just felt like they ran out of options other than forcing him to throw the ball 40 times to people as talented as me and you, which sucks. Like that guy deserved better. But Cordero's not going to have that problem with these Nevada receivers transferring in with him.
They essentially get a whole new offense.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Like just like on a silver platter. Here it is.
Yeah, and we've seen what that team can do. Like when they had Starkel, Bailey Gauthier, and who's the other guy? I forget who. Oh, the guy who transferred to Ole Miss and then decided to declare for the draft and nobody wanted him. I forget his name.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the slot receiver. He was awesome.
Yeah.
But when they had that trio, they threw the ball 50 times a game, targeted the top two receivers 60% of the time, give or take, and it was awesome. Everybody balled out, everybody ate, everybody was happy, everybody was fat, everybody got fat from it. It was great. So I think we see that again with Cordero, Lockhart, and Cooks. It's gonna be awesome. The Mountain West consistently. I know I don't need to sell you on it as a Boise fan. It's the best conference. We always see these awesome, like these teams. It's awesome for so many reasons.
Yeah,
the games start late. The offenses they're not just fun, but I feel pretty strongly that relative to every other conference, more or less, like all of these teams have rich history, and they have offensive systems that transcend coaching staff. So it's what you're getting before the year,
right?
It's great.
Well, it's funny. There was I follow a lot of Mountain West, beat writers and stuff more closely than a lot of people probably do, but there was a lot of interconference transfers.
Yeah,
this year, like obviously, like in your case, Nevada to San Jose State, but I remember seeing a few they were going to Colorado State, It'd go like from Wyoming. Wyoming had a mass exodus. I mean, we could talk about that. What do we think happened? Because
something happened, dude.
something,
Like I tried to start a conversation about it on Twitter, and Wyoming fans came out to kill me. They're like, Craig Bull can win 9 games with his eyes closed. He doesn't need any of this talent. It's like, whoa. Like, I just see all of your best players leaving the team. Like,
that's not by coincidence. Why. That's not by coincidence. Like, I just don't believe they're saying, "Oh, we're all good enough to play for a Power 5 team." Like, some of them might, but there's no way that I think like all 3 of their quarterbacks left. Yeah, like all of them. Like not
Chambers went to a D2 school.
And then, because Chambers left, and then the other guy. Who the hell's the other guy?
Levi.
Yeah, right. He was the first domino, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was the first domino, and then like a week later, Chambers decides, "Oh, I'm leaving too." And then I think like a third one left, but
Valladay left for Arizona State, and Nair did the Tennessee.
Like Texas. Your best players, like guys that you would say have a chance to go pro, all left.
They still have Titus Swen. That's about it, though. But
you're good for him, I guess. But
he's gonna get 40 carries now, I guess.
Who's gonna give him the ball? Because this will actually lead a perfect segue into the next thing I'm going to talk to you about. But yeah, who's going to give him the ball? How do you lose all your quarterbacks? And then, you know what I thought of when all these things happened? You know that meme where the little guy's sitting there and the fire all around him?
Yeah.
Says, "This is fine." That's Wyoming right now.
It is. I agree.
Like, they are just on fire, and I have my theories of what maybe happened, but we won't discuss those here. We've talked about it off of air.
You're saving that for the Patreon?
Oh yeah, the Patreon. Our patrons are gonna get that in the Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll segue into the thing I really just started the whole thing I wanted to talk to you about. You tweeted out a list of schools that don't have a quarterback on their roster, right? And that was what the tweet was.
Yeah,
like they don't have a quarterback.
I phrased it. It's so difficult for me to go back and forth between corporate Andrew mode and like not corporate.
Here, let me read it just so.
Dude, don't put my corporate verbiage on the air. Like I feel like a scumbag for
list of schools that presently have nothing on campus representative of a starting quarterback for 2022, and it's a list of what 15 teams or so.
Yeah.
So of those teams, which one or two do you think are the most, I would say,
ambiguous?
I was going to say more attractive for somebody to transfer to or to take a role and become a fan.
So number one has to be Louisiana Tech with Cumbie there, right? And I don't think we should count USC because Caleb Williams is going there. It's
right. We won't count them.
Yeah. But I think it has to be Louisiana Tech with Cumbie being there. I don't count Aaron Allen as an option just based on everything we've seen. Well, 95% of what we've seen. He put up – are you familiar with Aaron Allen at Louisiana Tech?
Very little.
So every game that we saw him play in up until – it was one of the games that Austin Kendall missed with COVID. So he started games this year, Aaron Allen. He started games last year and was all pretty reminiscent of Jack West getting playing time at Stanford, like the definition of a disaster. And then he starts against I forget against who, but because Kendall's out with COVID, I think, or an injury, and he throws for 303 touchdowns. They cover that. I think they still lose.
Charlotte.
That was out of nowhere, but I still think that when I'm curating my list of options of teams that don't have a quarterback on campus that can really compete for a starting role, I'm putting them in there, especially with Cumbie coming in, and I think he'll run something pretty close to an air raid. So Aaron Allen's probably not an awesome fit for that. So from a fantasy perspective, that's the one that's calling me. I want to see what he's able to get going in terms of bringing someone in. I mean, they lost. Well, do they still? I should probably check if Kendall has another year. I assumed he was done because he's been in our lives for like 7 years at this point. But maybe that's why we haven't heard any noise. I mean, this list is so the way I build my depth charts, and by build, I mean, this is my first year doing it. But the way I've built my depth charts for college football this year is basically this is going to be super nerdy from like a database perspective, but it's via activity. So when I see someone tweet about a player transferring, declaring, coming back, leaving, retiring, or just tweeting about a player in the context of what he did the previous year or the next coming year, I consider that as like activity, and I'll add that player to my depth chart. Or if I'm really bored, I'll just go in and plug and play. But that's like a lot less. That is a lot less reliable than, for instance, just referencing a static list of the players on each roster, right? That's like just a dimensional table of all the players that exist on that team. So activity. So as a result, my depth chart matrix probably has holes in it. Like this one, just simply because I haven't seen anything on Louisiana Tech at all this offseason. Like I don't think they've taken any transfers. Like they hired Cumbie before the Texas Tech bowl game, and I haven't heard a peep out of them since then. Maybe their beat writer retired or something, and I'm just not paying attention. But I follow all the aggregators as well, and I haven't seen anything out of that team. But yeah, but assuming Kendall's not there for another year,
it says redshirt senior. He was what he was. So
I mean,
but
yeah, but you can't trust
eligibility's so
anything.
weird. Eligibility's so weird now. Like, oh yeah, 2020 didn't count, and like you get medical red shirts and stuff. So like, I don't even know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna assume he's not there.
Yeah, I mean that's highly desirable in my opinion to be in that system. That would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the other schools on the list. Like the only one that kind of jumps out, App State is kind of fun.
So I got dude, this tweet got so much play. Chris Moxley from Campus to Canton, I think, came in with Mike from CFF side, Mike Bainbridge. He came in and corrected me that Chase Bryce is back for year 8 or whatever it is. So App State's good to go. But
well, you know, I had him for like, I know 2 full years in Dynasty, Bryce, right? Yeah. Then I cut him, and then I was like, I should have had him on my roster this year. Like he was okay to keep, but like now I feel like, is he reached his ceiling, or is he going to be taking his final year? He's going to be good. Like I don't know. Some guys I hold on to, but like sometimes you just got to learn to cut bait, and that's what I've learned playing Dynasty.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yes,
somewhat.
Your league has shorter rosters than a lot of Dynasty leagues. The other two that I'm in have much bigger rosters, and I can just you can just hang on to guys forever with no consequence.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, some people like that aspect of it. I kind of like the aspect of yours where you're forced to actually make roster decisions as opposed to in a lot of leagues. So, like anything else, it's all about kind of the league that you're playing in. But looking at my list that now cross checks close to yours in terms of teams that have open quarterback, really nothing coming in the way of talent presently on the roster. These 3 I think are at least a little interesting. Akron with Joe Moorhead there. So Joe Moorhead being a proponent of what we discussed, that I hate, how the wide receivers are pretty much worthless. Like he already conned, grifted Shockey, Jacques Louis, and Alex Adams, 2 transfers to come in there.
They lost 2, right? Like,
yeah, they lost.
Was it Mumford?
Yeah. So he's conned those guys to come in and just block for Cam Wiley and whoever ends up being quarterback there. But I mean, the quarterback in Moorhead system generally is like he's that dude is going to be 1A, 1B with the running back in terms of production. There is no 1C. So that's interesting to me. If they get someone who's athletic in the MAC, like that could be fun.
Yeah.
I am interested in Ball State a little bit, just in the sense that they have talent returning at every other position with Carson Steele, Johannes Tyler, and Jay-Sean Jackson. So if they take a transfer that can throw the ball, that I mean, at minimum, not necessarily the draft, but just add that guy potentially as a back end QB when you get to Mac play. That could be fun. And then I want to look more into Nevada because
Yeah,
okay, we
I have,
get it that
I had something while I'm thinking about it. I'm a Boise State guy. Everybody kind of knows that. But this guy entered the portal and he is yet to pop up. And I'm curious.
Years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where he ends up. Like,
he's good.
Yeah, he's good. And I'm wondering, he's not going to go somewhere where he's going to have to like sit. Like he's going to go somewhere like one of these teams on this list. Like Mizzou would be great for him. Yeah. I think. Like if his goal is to go pro, I think he needs to be front and center. And I feel like he's good enough to play there and be good.
I agree.
Right?
He could have. I think if you put him in front of an objective audience, he could have won any of the quarterback competitions that he was in the past couple of years. And that's not to say that Hank's bad, but I think that like every time we've seen Sears play, he's not just managing games, but he's actually going out and he can win games for your team.
Yeah. Like I was very impressed with him. Like I'm attached to Hank. I like Hank. I think what the attachment comes from is the Florida State game. You remember that as a true freshman, his first start, he goes out there and takes a beating. I mean, he takes a beating every week, but like that's when you saw like he was out there taking a beating, making throws that you're like, okay, this might be the next Kellen Moore. Holy shit, right? Like obviously it doesn't turn out that way. I'm just saying like that's what it felt like watching that, and you're like, man. I don't know how you could bench this guy. You know what he has in the tank, but like as the years went by, it's like, man, I think he just holds on to the ball way too long.
Yeah.
It's not protection anymore. It's you're not helping your protection.
I hope we don't see it with Sears, but like that feeling of disappointment I get, and I'm sure we all get when we see a really talented guy land at an FCS school, like it just sucks.
I don't think that's where he's going to go. I think he'll go somewhere in one of these teams on this list that you tweeted out, or a place where they have a quarterback, but they're not really sure about him yet. Like it could be up in the air, but he's going to have to go in there and win it like day one. Like they're going to have to look at him and say, okay, yeah, this guy is head and shoulders above anybody we have on this team.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know. That was one I remember when he left. I said, "Well, good for him." I'm curious where he ends up.
For sure.
Like I felt like Oregon would have been a good spot for him before Nix went, but I don't know. But as far as anything college football, anything you want to get out there before? There's a couple Ben Wallace card auctions I'm watching right now that are ticking down the end. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on them.
You can multitask, dude.
Oh yeah. Like they keep pinging my phone. Like you have
just max bid that stuff.
Jeez, man. There's one that somebody just tried to like run it up on me. I'm pretty sure because like all the other comps that I've seen are like $40-$50, and I bid like 45, right? And they bid it like way up. And I bid it to like 50 and it just kept going. I was like, okay, no. They think that I'm just going to pay whatever. Not going to happen. Not getting me today. But anyway, back to college football. Anything dynasty you want to talk about? Like, I know like my team was looking kind of rough there for a minute, but like I've had three wide receivers transfer in the last couple weeks. Actually, really in the last week. So I had obviously Mario Williams, who I got in a trade near the end of like the deadline, by the way. I got Brendan Rice. I don't know if he'll be worth anything, but I have him. And Javon Baker that just left Alabama for Kentucky. And I'm pretty excited about that one because he's been one I have not cut bait with, and he's been on my roster for 2 years. And like you said, it's hard to keep a lot of players in my league because have the rosters to do it.
Well, the portal adds so many more outs for these players. If you just think about it from the context of poker, right? Like once you have once you pre-flop, you have that talent, right? You now you want to see that through to the river even more with the like maybe they don't fire in year 1 or year 2 at their program where they're at Alabama in Baker's case, right? You don't that guy's talented or was assessed as being so coming out of high school. You want to see where that guy ends up because the most
he saw the field for Alabama. I mean, it was little, but he saw the field.
He did. But for just generally speaking, you want to see how that career plays out a little more in the sense that, I mean, historically, before we had the portal, like you could build conspiratory angles of Alabama players that didn't see the field. Hey, I still want to own them throughout their duration because they could go D Hart style and transfer to Colorado State and be an RB1, but it was much less likely. Now it's so much more likely in the sense, and I think it for good reason. It makes it harder to cut guys that come into your team initially with stars attached to their names, right? 4 or 5 star type guys. You want to see where they end up. Even if they don't make it in year 1, year 2.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because like you're seeing, like I think I said it earlier in this show here, like you're seeing guys that not necessarily didn't get to play, but just didn't like their situation, so they just left. Like they had a good season or a good look Levi Williams, right? For Wyoming. Like he had a fantastic bowl game. Like you're like, oh my God, he's going to be awesome next year, right? And then he decides to leave.
Yeah. So we see so little of this, and we hypothesize about the cause so much. My assumption is so much of what is happening in terms of generating players going into the portal is coaches from other schools reaching out to them and effectively recruiting them, and that's why they enter the portal. Like
it's interesting you say that because I feel the same way. I've wondered how the portal really works. Yeah. Like they say, hey, look, I can't really talk to you until you're in the portal, technically. So just go in the portal and we can talk. Basically, because I feel like it's I've seen guys go in the portal and then a week later, oh, I'm back. Like, so why'd you go in the portal? Like there was a reason you went in the portal.
Yeah.
And it has to be some technical, I don't know all the rules, so forgive me if I don't, but I think you're right though. I think there's some people reaching out to these guys and saying, hey, look, you may have better options if you go in the portal. Like there's some schools that could use your talent. I don't know. It just seems odd. Like I'm not worried about why a kid decides to leave as far as like personal stuff. Like it's his life at the end of the day, right? Like it's his decision, but like I think what we're about to see, if we haven't already seen it, is you have the Power 5 and the Group of 5, right? Like they've always been separate, but like it was kind of like, all right, you had 1A and then 1B, right? That was the level. Now it's almost widening that gap between the two, and it's almost an audition for the Power 5. Like these guys say, you know what? I didn't get a scholarship offer from an SEC school, so I'm going to go play at Troy. I know you had a big thing about Troy on Twitter recently, but I'm just using them as an example. So like you go to Troy, have 1,000-yard season. Oh, hey guys, I'm available now. Now that you've seen me play, and now they're like, okay, yeah, we got a spot for you now. Like, I feel like it's their audition for a Power 5 school more so than it ever has been.
You bring up, I mean, it's interesting because two views that I hold very strongly are in this case very much at odds, where I am, even though I'm a diehard Georgia fan, I am all about all 130 schools. I consider everyone to be equal in my eyes, in the sense that like
I'm with you there.
I don't believe in that Power 5 autonomy stuff like that. It's total garbage to me. Like I understand how it works in practice, but like everybody's FBS, and I hate the direction that things are generally moving. But what's at odds with that sentiment is the idea that I also believe in maneuverability of the athletes via the transfer portal. Like I go get your bread, go do whatever you want to do. But the result of that is what you're saying in terms of the divide growing between P5 and G5. So, I mean, I guess I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but if I wanted to reconcile those two things, I don't know how I necessarily would, because they're directly at odds with one another.
Right. I think I'm exactly on the same page as you are with that, because like, not that I agree that there should be this widening gap, but I feel like that's just the way it's going. It's always been a gap, like in not in my eyes. Like I with you, I like all 130 teams. They're all important to me. And as a matter of fact, I might enjoy watching Wyoming play Colorado State in 6-degree snow, right? Like more so than I might watch Florida play Ole Miss, right? Like it's just, to me and you, people like us, we enjoy that.
Sociopaths, if you will. So.
Right. Yes. And it just sucks because like, you get a guy, if you're a fan of one of these group of 5 schools, it's got to suck when you have a guy that's a star and then he gets poached by a big school, and how is he going to say no? You know what I mean? Like if you play at Memphis, like, yeah, okay, you're it's not a small school, but if Alabama comes calling after your 1,500-yard Biletnikoff season, you're going to go, right? Like Alabama isn't just calling you to put you on their bench. Like I just don't think that's – look at Jameson Williams, right? He somehow didn't get on the field for Ohio State, which is wild when you really think about it. But then you see the talent that they have. It's like, who do you take off, right? But they didn't bring him into Alabama to sit. And I know that's not group of 5 to power 5. That's 2 juggernauts, that you're talking about there. But like those big power 5 schools, they don't just get these guys to come sit.
Okay.
Generally.
Let me tangent this. So I don't believe there's any chance that Bama enters next year with their receiving core looking how it does right now. I wonder what they're going to do in the way of the portal there, because they're getting crushed with Bolden, Mechie, and Williams all going pro. And I mean, it was
Baker leaving,
Baker transferring, yeah.
But then Hall had a rough end of the season. I mean,
dude, I thought I get that he made a couple mistakes, but I mean, relative to, so think about how we thought about I don't know how you say it, Ajay Hall. A month ago, let's say. 2 months ago, we thought that he was out the door from Bama, that his freshman season story had been
Billingsley left too, by the way.
Yeah. And it had been written with basically him just being penalized by Saban for just being a bad teammate, and that's why he didn't get out on the field. So I mean, relative to where it was 2 months ago, his freshman season's a success in my eyes. Dude made legit plays in the national championship. Obviously, he cost them in some ways, but like he didn't.
I'm not even going to talk about that. Like, I feel like to be on the field in the national championship game, you have to have some talent. I mean, that's a given, right?
So it's him.
Like I watched it. I'm gonna pull, and I hate it so much that I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna pull a Fusu, whatever the hell his name is, analysis. Yeah, some analysis here on him. When I watched him run routes, he looked so. I don't want to say lost isn't the word. It was like his brain was moving faster than his body could do it. Like he looked uncomfortable running routes. And maybe that's just the fact that he's a freshman and he hasn't truly learned the nuances of route running, but he looked in over his head as far physically in that sense. That could all change. Again, he's a freshman, so it's
They have him, JoJo Earl, Ja'Cory Brooks, and then Latu at tight end. For any other school, that's
plenty.
Yeah, but I can't imagine them entering 2022 with that as like with Ja'Cory Brooks, who looked dope down the stretch. Like he's not going to be their WR1 going into the year. There's no way.
He's going to be important. I think he starts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably a given, right? I think he starts. It could be a freshman in this class that they get that comes in and he's a monster. I'm trying to think if there's anybody out there that's.
They were trying to recruit Butte, right? Like that's what everyone was saying, but he's staying. Like Kelly's not letting him out. Absolutely not. So I think what happens is someone totally unexpected enters the portal and then is at Bama a week later.
Like enters the portal and is at Bama within a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. What about the Taj Harris?
Yeah, he's still in the portal.
Like he could show up there.
But that's like the equivalent of when they brought in your boy Garrick Dieter from Bowling Green to win a national championship as like their WR4. That's how I equate that. Now you're gonna see A.T. Perry in the portal, or magically see Jalen Robinson or Jordan Addison enter the portal and then wind up at Bama a week later.
That's actually a good call. Like Addison would be a great call. I think that's very highly possible.
They should have promoted Marion to OC. Now you reap what you sow.
Yeah, like Addison to Bama would actually work, right? Like,
it'd be amazing.
I'm kind of liking that.
Yeah.
The more you say it, like I'm like, you know what? There might be something there. But yeah, I feel like this. They're not going to just run with what they've got.
No,
you're right. Like they saw the success that Jameson Williams like that. Yeah, he was an elite talent, but like there's elite talent out there that's just waiting for Bama to call them.
Definitely.
So, like Mario Williams would have been cool, but
that would have been cool.
But he was always gonna follow.
Yeah,
Riley to USC. But all right, I guess we can leave it there. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
We're good. Let's do this again soon.
We'll definitely do it again soon. And I guess that's all we've got for today. So until next time, later.
Later.